Morning, super sentence stackers. Thank you for being here in the classroom. My name's Jane Considine and I'm your English writing teacher. I'm so glad you found me. I'm here to help you with your writing. Every day at 9:45 you can find me here and I'll help you with your writing ideas. Now, don't worry if you're watching in New Zealand and you're watching me later, because if you send your work in to me with the hashtag super sentence stackers, I always read your work and I will comment on it and give you some feedback. I love reading all of your writing, and you can be rest assured that any piece that you send in to me, I promise I will read it. Well, now that you're here, let's have a little think what our focus is going to be today. Our writing is going to be based around a film called The Piano, and I've loved this film for many years. This is a wonderfully tender film about a gentleman called Arthur. He's getting old and he decides to play a song for his grandson on the piano. And as he plays the song, his mind drifts back. We get a flashback in this film and we get an insight to some of the things that have happened to him in the past. His time when he was a soldier in World War II. We also get to see that actually his wife has died and Arthur is now a widow. We also see right back to when he was a child and some of his favourite toys. And we get a real insight into some of the highs and lows of Arthur's life. I am so excited about building the writing around this film today. It truly is an evocative, beautiful and tender film, and I know your writing is going to be excellent. In a moment, I'm going to do some demonstration writing, but just so you're really sure what's going to happen, in the description below is a link to the film, and I want you to go away and watch that film and enjoy the whole film. But also in the description link below is an overview of the chunks. And what I'd like you to do is choose a chunk. It's really important for Mrs. Considine to be able to sew this story together that you choose your chunk and that you write very specifically within those times. That means that our story will have good cohesion and will link from, let's say, Amy in Bristol writing chunk 1, you know who you are, or Daniel in Kent writing chunk 2. It means that it will sew nicely together and will really build into the nation's story really clearly. And you can help me with that by writing within your times. Remember, when you hand in your writing, I need to know your name, your age, and you need to tell me what chunk you're writing. This film has been cut into 9 precious pieces, so you can write chunk 4 if that is your chosen chunk. In a moment, I'm going to be writing chunk 5. I'm going to be your writing teacher, and I'm going to give you some ideas for your writing today based around the film The Piano. I'm going to urge that you try your best to write 9 sentences for your chunk. I don't need any more than 9, and I don't mind if you have less than 9, but I'd really like you to try your best. Okay, what are the writing challenges today? Well, there are 3, and there are always 3, and our first writing challenge today is touching. Many of you know there are 9 ideas for writing. These are called the fantastics, and one of them is all about the sense of touch, and that is going to be one of our focuses. What things feel like to the touch or how they are touched. We're going to work on this challenge in a moment. The second writing challenge, we're going to build a complex sentence, and we're going to start with an ing non-finite verb. Don't worry if things sound too tricky, because when I've explained it and when you get some concrete ideas and some examples, you'll think, I can do that. And our third challenge is we're going to build a metaphor, but we're going to stretch and extend this metaphor through the piece of writing. Before we start, I'm going to gather some ideas about how I can run a semantic thread through this piece. And actually, the film gives me a gift on a plate. It is called The Piano, and the whole backdrop has music. Because of music, I'm now going to gather linked and connected ideas to do with music, and this is going to help me stretch a metaphor. I'm going to use that key idea, music, and then I'm going to gather some themed language. So let me have a little think about some of the themed language I could gather here. I'm thinking all of the words that are connected to music. Harmony. Oh, that could be a wonderful word. Tempo. That's an interesting word. Scale. Duet. I'm going to gather some more words. Symphony. Chord. Musical chord has a H in it. I need to think about that. Crescendo. Oh, that's a good musical word. Note. Rhythm. That starts me off, and I might be able to add more musically themed words there that I can trail through this chunk of the story. I'm going to be your writing teacher now, and what I'm going to do is give you a window to my mind. You're going to see inside the writer's brain, and I'm going to talk out loud all my internal thoughts as I craft and construct the writing. You're going to see me think about my ideas, choose precise language, and I'm going to use thesaurus thinking when I want to gather words in the same synonym family. Are you ready? Chunk 5. That's my chosen chunk. And my first writing challenge is all about touching. I'm going to start, and it's always important to do this, that you keep your central character at the heart of your writing. We're going to write a third person narrative. So we're going to use words like Arthur, wife, grandson. We're going to use pronouns like he, she, they. Arthur. I'm going to introduce here the character name. Arthur's fingers. Now, it's always important to reread your work, and when I go back and reread this, Arthur's fingers, because they are his fingers and they belong to him, I'm going to put a belonging to apostrophe just there. Arthur's fingers moved on the piano keys. Tinkered, I quite like that, tinkered on the piano keys. I'm going to finish that off, piano keys. I'd really like the reader to know how Arthur is touching those keys because he seems to be in a relationship, a very fond relationship with this piano. And I think if I choose an adverb that shows how fond he is of his piano, then that will be really evocative. Arthur's fingers tinkered on the piano keys. And I'm going to do some thesaurus thinking now. A word like maybe smoothly. It's okay, but I don't know if it's precise enough. Gently. That's a good word in that family. Gently. Another word might be softly. I really do like gently and softly. I think I'm going to use softly. Do you know what's really interesting about adverbs? They can move in a clause. I could put that in lots of different positions. I'm just going to test it in a few different positions. Arthur's fingers tinkered softly on the piano keys. Arthur's fingers softly tinkered on the piano keys. Or I can leave it there in final position. I think I'm going to leave it there for emphasis. Okay, I'm now going to zoom into thinking about a complex sentence, and I've given you a clue already that it's going to start with a verb ending in ing. I want to now get the reader to understand we're moving into a flashback. So I need a word that takes the reader back, something like remembering. That's a good verb, ends in ing, and will be a good start to the sentence. I'm going to do some thesaurus thinking now to just test out, is that definitely the verb I want to start with? Remembering, yes. But in that synonym family, I could also have something like thinking. I could have something even a bit more poetic, like drifting. You know, your mind can drift back. Oh, I like all of those. I'm going to make it obvious though. It's a flashback. So I think I'm going to choose the verb remembering. Now, remembering. And I take the reader back to his time when he was a soldier in the war. Remembering his time in the war. And that's subordinating clause. It doesn't make sense on its own, but I'm going to now put in a comma and finish this sentence. Remembering, maybe I need to emphasise the flashback even more. Remembering his time, remembering back to his, remembering back. I think I'm going to add that in so it's more obvious, it's a flashback. Remembering back to his time in the war. And now I'm going to begin to introduce some musical language. A staccato. Oh, Mrs. C. I've switched those two letters around. It's a good job I look closely. A staccato of gunfire. All the musical sounds of that gunfire. I'm now thinking about the bombs and how they will be really noisy. I'm going to push some musical language with that. A crescendo of bombs. And now I'm thinking about the sounds of the trenches. And he's reminded of actually the thud of the enemy's boots. It'd be good here if I used a word like rhythm, a staccato of gunfire, a crescendo of bombs, and the rhythm of the enemy's boots, and the faint rhythm, going back in there to make that more, because they're not so close yet, the faint rhythm of the enemy's boots. Now, because I tried to do quite a lot there, there's a lot of enemies, so I'm going to make that plural, and my belonging to apostrophe has to show there are many enemies. And I'm going to put boots. I'm going to go back now and look at my spelling of faint rhythm. Oh, it's really, don't be worried if you make a spelling mistake, because when you're constructing writing, there's a lot to think about. And sometimes you might put an extra letter in, which I've just noticed I've done there. Okay. Remembering back to his time in the war, a staccato of gunfire, a crescendo of bombs, and the rhythm of the enemy's boots. What I'm going to do now is zoom into the third challenge, which actually we've probably already started. We've introduced this musical metaphor idea, but I don't want to drop it. I want to continue it and stretch it further. But this is a really sad part of the film, because his friend gets shot. And what I'm going to do now is focus on the sound of that moment. A gunshot. And then I'm going to use some ellipsis. And then I'm going to zoom into the sound. I'm going to accentuate it. A gunshot, amplified. Another hint, amplified. Add a musical word. I'm going to now show and tell the reader that his friend has died. His friend fell. It's a really sad part here. His friend fell. And I'm now going to introduce this idea of, and stretch it more, kind of the musical sadness of the piece. His friend fell, a low note in this dark battle symphony, relentless battle symphony. I like relentless because for many soldiers it went on for so long in this relentless battle symphony. And we can see now this musical language coming all through the piece. I want the reader to be sure we know that this is a tragic part, and I want them to realise that his friend dies. It's a finale, but we need to use the right language. I need an adjective before the word finale. I'm going to do some thesaurus thinking so it's got the right mood. I could use a word like sudden, a sudden finale. I'm going to write that down, a sudden finale. I could use a word like abrupt, and that would also be in that same synonym family. But actually, for this part of the story, this would work and would give us a gentle nod to an alliterative phrase for high connectivity and stickability as we read it. A fatal finale. And for Arthur now, this is such a sad moment. And I want to capture it. It's, you know, he would feel heartbroken, really heartbroken. What we could do now is kind of play on a word like chord, because there's this idea of a musical chord and a chord that could be like a rope or a sinew in his heart. They're spelt differently. It's a play on those two meanings. A fatal finale, a chord snapped in Arthur's heart. I'm going to go back now and reread my work. I'm going to look at the spelling. I'm going to check for the rhythm of the writing. I'm going to see that it makes sense. Arthur's fingers tinkered on the piano keys softly. I'm going to go back and reread that. I didn't read on. Sometimes you do that. You read to the end of the page and you think there might be a full stop there. I'm going to do that again. Arthur's fingers tinkered on the piano keys softly, remembering back to his time in the war. A staccato of gunfire, a crescendo of bombs, and the faint rhythm of the enemy's boots. A gunshot amplified. His friend fell, a low note in this relentless battle symphony. A fatal finale. A chord snapped in Arthur's heart. I think that might be better as a full stop. And this as a capital letter. This shorter for emphasis, a chord snapped in Arthur's heart. This is a very evocative, tender film, and I want you to really think about your language. Thesaurus thinking will help you with that, to get accurate, precise language. And I'm going to be particularly on the lookout for those pieces that run musical language all through the piece. I'd love you to subscribe. I'd love you to click the bell so you know when Mrs. C is doing a writing lesson. And remember, I'm going to see you back here at 3:30, where I will read my favourites, my favourite pieces that make it into the nation's story, my very favourite part of the day. When you come back to hear the story, you can snuggle up on the sofa, you can put your slippers on and take a listen to see if you've made it into the final piece. Thank you, super sentence stackers. Don't forget to put your chunk number on, your name and your age, and I look forward to reading your writing later. Thank you, everybody.